Senators.
Order.
Whenever anyone deliberates questions of great importance, they should empty themselves of hatred and friendship and anger and pity. When these feelings get in the way, it can be difficult for the mind to see the truth, and nobody has ever served his passions and his best interests at the same time. If we use our intellect, it will prevail. But if passion takes hold, it dominates, and the mind is useless. I remember, senators, many occasions when kings and tribes, under the influence of anger or pity, made bad judgments. But I prefer to remind you all of times when our ancestors, resisting their passion, acted justly and properly. During the Macedonian War, which we fought against King Perseus, the great and glorious community of the Rhodians, which had grown thanks to the people of Rome, was disloyal and fought against us. And after the war was over, and the question of what to do with the Rhodians was being deliberated, our ancestors let them go, unpunished, lest somebody might say that it was the wealth of the Rhodians rather than the resentment for the wrong they'd done us which pushed us to retaliation. Likewise too in all the Punic Wars, although the Carthaginians, both in peacetime and when we were supposed to have a truce, did many abominable things, the Romans never retaliated when they had the chance, but instead asked, what course of action befits our dignity? You, senators, must likewise beware of letting the guilt of Publius Lentulus and the rest sway you more than your own dignity, of paying more attention to your anger than your reputations. If a punishment can be found that fits their crime, then I will change my mind. But if the enormity of their guilt simply beggars belief, then I advise that we limit ourselves to the punishments that the law has set down. Many of those who spoke before me expressed their pity for the Commonwealth in neat and splendid phrases. They dwelt upon the horrors of civil war, the wretched fate of the conquered, the rape of maidens and boys, children snatched from the arms of their parents, mothers subjected to the will of the victors, homes and temples pillaged, in short, arms and corpses everywhere, gore and grief. But by the gods, what was the point of such speeches? To incense us against the conspiracy? Oh, naturally. A man who has not been moved by the monstrous crime itself will be fired up when he hears speech about it. No. No one here believes that the wrongs that have been done to us are unimportant. Some of us indeed resent them more than they should. But not all men, senators, have the same freedom of action. If the lowly, who live their lives in obscurity, commit some offense through anger, no one ever hears of it. Their fame is on the same level as their fortune. But for those who wield great power, who live their lives at the top, their actions are known throughout all the world. And so it is that in the highest positions there is the least freedom of action, neither partiality nor hatred, but least of all anger is appropriate. What in others is called anger, in a ruler is called arrogance and cruelty. Now, for my own part, senators, I do not consider any tortures to be sufficient for the crimes of these men, but most people remember only that which happens last. And in the case of heinous men, if their punishment is just a little bit too severe, people will remember the punishment and not the crime. Now, I have no doubt that Senator Decimus Silanus, a brave man, a gallant man, was led to recommend summary execution out of patriotism, and that when it comes to such an important matter, he would neither play favourites nor hold grudges. So well do I know the man's character and his honesty, and yet his proposal seems to me not cruel, for what could be too cruel in the case of such men, but foreign to our country and its customs. For surely, Decimus Silanus, it was either fear or the severity of their crime, which prompted you to recommend the ultimate penalty. Now, it's foolish to speak about fear, because thanks to the precautions of our distinguished consul, we have the criminals under guard. But as far as the penalty is concerned, I think death would be a relief for these men, not a punishment. It would remove all possibility of mortal ills, all chances of joys and of sorrow. Oh, but by the gods, Silanus, why did you not say that before they are executed they should also be whipped? Was it because whipping them is against the law? Well, it is. But there are also other laws which say that a Roman citizen should not be executed, even when found guilty, but should be given the opportunity of exile. Why respect the law in the lesser point when you've disregarded it in the greater? Or was it because whipping them and then executing them would simply be too cruel? But again, what could be too cruel in the case of such men? But, you may say, who will complain of a sentence that is passed against traitors? Time is the answer. The passing of years, and fortune, whose whims rule the world. Whatever happens to these men will be well deserved, yes, but you should consider, senators, how your actions will affect other criminals. Every bad precedent starts in good circumstances, and when the control of this government is passed to other men who may be wicked or who may be incompetent, your precedent is likewise transferred from those who well deserve it to those who do not. The Spartans,
He has a right to be heard!
The Spartans. When the Spartans conquered the Athenians, they placed 30 men in charge of their government, and to begin with, they executed without trial only the most wicked and hated citizens, and everyone rejoiced and said it was well done. And afterwards, they kept going. They executed good men and bad men alike and terrorized the rest. And Athens was reduced to slavery, and they paid a heavy price for their foolish rejoicing within our own lifetimes. General Sulla, when he ordered the execution of Damasippus and others who had grown rich and powerful at the expense of Rome's people, who among us did not commend that action? Everyone said, these criminals, they've ruined the country with their rebellion, they deserve their fate. But that was the beginning of a disaster, because pretty soon, whenever anyone desired another man's villa, or even his goblet or his clothes, he tried to have his name put on the execution list. And before long, those who had cheered the execution of Damasippus were themselves being led away to slaughter. And the massacre did not end until Sulla became a dictator. Now, for my own part, I don't fear anything of the sort happening with our own Marcus Tullius in our time. But in a big country like this one, senators, there's all sorts of people. It is possible that at some other time, when some other man is consul and likewise in command of an army, that someone might tell a lie, and that someone might be believed. And when that consul, with this precedent set before him, draws his sword, who's going to stand in his way? Our ancestors, senators, were never lacking in either wisdom or courage, but they were not too proud to avoid working with foreigners, provided they were honourable. They took weapons from the Samnites, they took their insignia from the Etruscans. In short, whatever they found agreeable in either allies or enemies, they put into practice at home, with enthusiasm, preferring to imitate the successful, rather than envy them. But in that same time, following the example of the Greeks, they whipped their citizens and they executed them. And later, when the country grew and matured, when different factions emerged, when innocent people started being killed and other wrongs of that nature were perpetrated, they changed the law to allow condemned men the opportunity of exile. This, senators, seems to me to be a particularly good reason why we should not adopt a new policy, for surely there was greater merit in those men who from tiny resources built this mighty country than there is in us who can scarcely hold on to what they so gloriously won. So, do I think that we should just let them go and swell Catiline's army? No. Here is what I propose. Confiscate their money and imprison them in the strongest towns we have. And furthermore, let no one speak of them again under pain of being considered a traitor by this Senate.